spirits stay mute while your ego spread rumors. We survivalists turn to consumers.
Talking about reparations, a recurring theme on this radio station. And I think it's a good discussion to have. I don't think they work. And I think logistically, it's a bad idea, to be honest with you. But let's go back to the phone. Let's jump over to Dave instead. Hi, Dave.
I am now. Thank you so much for taking my call. Thank you for filling in for Cliff, and thankful for WVON and having these exchange of views. Attorney Shabazz, is there a legal, by statute, definition for justice? Because that would lead into the answer for one of your questions. Is there by statute or specificity?
I mean, there's a Black's
for justice.
There's what's called a Black's Law Dictionary of definition of justice. That's kind of it's kind of a word we use in the legal profession, which is basically described as fairness, moral righteousness, scheme or system of law that which a person receives his or her or its due from a system including all rights, both natural and legal.
Yes, I meant in the sense like a legal description. It could be described down to the millimeter, a certain area or so like that. Well, that was going to say in the preamble to the United States Constitution, it says, well, one of the first actionable things I think is to establish justice. So that would kind of answer one of your questions. I would think on the federal level that they would. How they would do it from the military, $15 billion for a vote, that could be one thing. The logistics would be something like World War II, where everything gears up,
You see, here's a problem with the World War II analogy that a lot of people like to use, whether it was Jewish victims of the Holocaust or Japanese in internment camps. At the very least, you have specific individuals. Hold on for a second. You have specific individuals that you can identify, who are victims of the wrongful acts. And number two, reparations were done for the most part shortly after the wrongful incidents took place. The problem.
Yes,
hold on for a second. Now, the problem with doing reparations for slavery, what I will argue, is you're just too far removed because once again, who gets reparations?
Well, yes, I had moved to that part, but I was just saying one of the questions was who pays the federal level. With the states, they would facilitate. And how would they do it from the military? The other part is, if you ever heard of or take a look at the podcast, Neely Fuller Jr., the cows, but the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. Like I was saying about justice is a concept. And he kind of specified that, for example, it'd be not money, but it would be, and not transferable, housing with mineral rights, and it would be exchangeable, fully, fungible, and or education. So if I decided I want to go to Alcorn State, I could, up to a PhD level, or I could be a polymath if I chose to. Those would be some of the things specific to the question, not just money.
No, understand, Dave. We got, like I said, a couple of calls I wanted to try to get to, but thank you for your input. Let's go to Mike and get his thoughts on reparations. Hi, Mike. You're on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON.
Good afternoon. Good evening. How you feeling?
Doing well.
Hey, what I want to say is that the minute you reduce the repair of a whole people who have been damaged and robbed of everything just to money, then of course it's going to fall into what you're saying. Well, who's going to pay? It's more than just money. If you give black people in the condition we're in now money, all they're going to do is spend it because we're not in a mental condition to do anything with it. Reparations is more than money. It has to be repair of a people who've been destroyed. And if it doesn't start there, and if it starts with money, I don't even want it.
But once again, my friend, here's a question. But here's a question: who is the beneficiary of that? Because let's say, I have a friend who, for the most part, is white as day, but he can trace his ancestry to Ancestry.com. That he's got 5% African. Is that?
Come on,
no? But why not?
Hell no.
Why not?
They're not the descendants of slave reality.
But how do you know that? But if that person can provide proof and evidence that they are the descendant of a slave and can do the DNA testing, why is that individual not entitled to reparations?
That's so small. Come on, your name is Shabazz, right?
No.
Your last name is Shabazz. Your last name is Shabazz, right?
I'm also that's immaterial. At the end of the day, so if everybody wants justice,
about these people who got 5% of blood. We're talking
but
about
they can prove it.
Who directly have been infected, and that it just stopped. You can't even stop at slavery. What about Jim Crow? We just got the right to vote in the '60s. Don't take it back to just to slavery.
So in other words, and thanks for the phone call, because like I said, we got people coming through here. So in other words, reparations for me, but not for thee, even if you can prove that you were a descendant of a slave, because I thought that was the criteria for reparations, not whether you're black or white, is whether you were the descendant of a slave. Tell you what, Rodney Robert, the other guy, you guys stick on the line. We will continue this conversation on the other side of the news. It is 5:30. I told you guys, I told you. 773-591-6090. You're listening to Abdul Hakim Shabazz in for Cliff Kelly here on WVON, the Talk of Chicago. We'll be right back. Good evening, folks. It is WVON commentator Abdul Hakim Shabazz this evening in for Cliff Kelly. Always good to be in the spot of my good friend, the governor of Chicago Talk Radio. He hasn't texted me yet saying, young man, I'm going to be talking to when I get back, so that's a good thing. 773-591-6090 is the number, of course. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at WVON1690, and also follow me on Twitter at ATTY Abdul. So if there's some words you want to use but can't use on the public airwaves, you can more likely use them in the Twitterverse. We're talking today about reparations. It's come up a couple times on these airwaves today. And so I just thought I'd throw my opinion out there. I don't agree with them. But the time to do this was, in the post-slavery universe. I think too much time has gone by, too much time has passed, and logistically, it's just not feasible. And a number of you who called in to disagree with me, you have proved my point. Because when you say that is the descendants of slaves who are entitled to reparations, and then I tell you, okay, in the universe of Ancestry.com and 23andMe and DNA testing and kits, if some white guy who lives out in Berwyn can prove that he has a black ancestor and is a descendant of a slave, is that person also not entitled to reparations? Well, no, then you got to do this. Like, oh, no. Don't start throwing a bunch of strings attached. If either descendants of slaves get reparations or they don't. And if you can prove and provide proof that you're a descendant of a slave, I don't care what color you are, because before I'm handing out anything, I want to see some ID. Go get some papers or whatever and bring back genealogy. Okay, yep, you're free and clear. Well, your ancestor wasn't, but you are. Bam, here's your reparations. Let's go to Chris, who's online. Hi, Chris. You're on 1690 WVON. Hey, Chris, you're on the air. Turn your radio down, because we can't hear you. You're listening to the delay. Okay, let's pod Chris down until we'll try to bring him back up. Hi, Robert. You're on 1690 WVON.
Well, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My name is Robert Moore, and my organization is United for Better Communities. Sir, this is my personal opinion. It's like you was talking about your personal opinion. This is what's wrong with us as a black folk. We always find a reason why we can't do something. White folk going to get all the money they want to get anyway. So who cares about some person coming up and, they don't qualify and this and that or whatever. If they can prove it, I agree with you on that. Then they should be able to get the money. Now, the real problem is that the money should be placed in a place whereas we can create the infrastructure to help our folks.
But I don't want somebody getting my money. I want my stuff, because nobody can spend my money better than me.
Sir, can I finish?
Sure.
Right now, based upon what you're saying, ain't nobody going to get a cotton-picking thing. Based upon what you're saying. I'm saying it's just like the death penalty. This should end because some people who did not commit a crime, they were executed. So please don't use that methodology. Let's go back to this. If we are harmed, we should be given reparations. Now, how all this should be done with people with maybe not so much education, but people with some common sense will make sure that our people who are ill, sick, need health care, need education, need housing. Those things would be taken care of. And just create the tool so black folk can take care of their own business. It's not so much of them giving us anything. Yeah, we owed because our foreparents worked for free. So what I want you to do, please focus on the fact, not ways that we should not get reparation. You spend so much time on this negativity.
Sir, okay, pot him down for a second, please. Thank you. Pot him down. The thing is, I'm not saying this. You're just saying that, this is negativity. No, I'm just asking you logistically, how are you going to do it? One of the things I learned as a little kid growing up, and I will always appreciate my dad for teaching us this. Whenever me and my little brothers would have some weird idea, my father would not say no. He would just ask a question. Okay, son, you want XYZ. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to, you want to go out with your little friends and go meet them at, the mall. Okay, how are you going to get there? He wasn't being negative. He was just asking a question because you got all these grand ideas in your head, but absolutely no thought out or no thought put into the logistics or the execution of making this happen. And I just came up with, this was just 5 questions. I just came up with like 10 minutes, while I was having Starbucks this afternoon. Just imagine if I really put my mind to it, the logistical questions that I would feel would have to be answered. Now, guess what? There may be somebody out there who can answer all this stuff and like, you know what? You just gave me something I didn't think about. I am not so damn arrogant. Well, I am. That I can't change my mind once I get new facts, new opinions. Sure, you know what? This just might work. But the very fact that the majority of people who are pushing for reparations would not want to give them to somebody who doesn't necessarily look black but could prove they are a descendant of a slave, that tells me more than what I need to know. Let's go to Natalie. Hi, Natalie. You're on 1690 WVON.
Hello, Attorney Shabbat. First of all, there's an interesting article, I believe it was on Huffington Post from February of maybe 2016, stating the hows and the whys reparations should be paid to black people. And as an attorney, you know that time has no bearing when you've been harmed.
Actually, yes, it does. It's called the statute of limitations. Yes, it does.
Okay. When you're looking to be made whole, you know as an attorney that some cases can drag on forever.
But you got to file within a certain time.
Okay, we're not talking about filing in a certain time because we're not talking about that. But when you have been harmed, time has no bearing. What you're talking
Actually,
about,
yes, it does. It's called the statute of limitations. Because if you get, for example, if you're in a car accident. And usually, hold on for a second. If you're in a car accident and you're injured by somebody else's negligence, you cannot wait until ad infinitum doomsday to file your lawsuit. You have a certain time period for which your legal action must be taken, depending on the jurisdiction that you live. Some places a year, some places 2 years, some places like as soon as you discover the problem, you got a year to file. You cannot sit there in perpetuity and wait to file your claim. So I'm just going to correct you on that point. That time does matter. Now, does statute of limitations apply in this? I don't know. I could argue you're still feeling the effects today, but of course the question is, when did you first notice it? Well, right after the Jim Crow stuff started. All right, well, your time to sue was back then, but there's always a time limit, on lots of legal causes of action. Thanks for calling. I mean, that's just not trying to be the bad guy here, but that's just a fact, folks. I mean, if you want to argue with facts, that's what the other guys down the dial are for. 773-591-1690, 773-591-1690. See, I told you where we're going today, so everybody had ample warning and ample notice about the touchy conversation we're going to have. And it's not being the bad guy to simply ask questions. What is wrong with asking how? How are you going to do this? Well, what form will this take place? If any of you guys in the audience had children and your son or daughter came to you and said, I want, money, just give it to me, they'd be like, whoa, what for? What do you need this for? Where are you going to spend it? What are you doing with it? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, you'd at least ask that question. So what is so wrong and so horrible and makes me such a bad person for simply asking, ladies and gentlemen, how much you're going to pay, who pays, who's going to get it, and what format will the reparations take place. Because like I said, I'm not a big fan if, as friends of mine would say, well, this should be put into a fund to build oh, no. I have no desire to see some of the people I have to watch on MSNBC and CNN go anywhere near any money that I might be entitled to. Just cut me a check, and my wife and I will be just fine, and I'll go about my merry business, and you people never hear from me ever again. See, somebody out there about to start a GoFundMe page right now. It is 5:47 on 1690 WVON. We'll come back and wrap up the show in just a bit. 5:52. It's going to wind down the show today here at 1690 WVON. Abdul Hakim Shabazz in for Cliff Kelly. A couple quick programming notes. Yes, I will be here tomorrow. But come on, admit it. Deep down inside, it's the guy you love to hate and hate to love. God, I can't stand it, man. But he's just so compelling. I know. I get that from my wife all the time. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk, this will be fun for Friday. We're going to talk about guns and tobacco, believe it or not. In the wake of violence in Chicago this year, maybe what the city needs are, this is going to sound maybe counterintuitive, but maybe more armed citizens, more armed law-abiding citizens. And so the bad guys know, hey, folks aren't going to put up with that crap. So we'll have that. And also, an appellate court decision came down actually giving the thumbs up to Chicago's cigar tax. And so whenever I see these things, and as a partaker of cigars, because cigarettes are the tobacco of the unwashed and uneducated, while a cigar is a civilized person's piece of tobacco, it always gets me to thinking about just the taxes that folks have to pay, and are you getting your money's worth? So that'll be part of our conversation tomorrow. Donald Trump wants to put Medicaid recipients who are able-bodied to work. Don't see why, if you're not able-bodied in a universe with 3.5% unemployment, you cannot find a job, absent a major physical or mental impairment. And then we're going to do a little segment that I call Ask Abdul Anything. Basically, anything and everything tomorrow, probably in the 5 o'clock hour, will be on the table. The only thing you cannot ask me is what is my mother's maiden name and the last 4 digits of my Social Security number. But anything else is more than fair game. Like I said, I've been doing the commentary here for about a year. I've been filling in for Cliff for a little while, but sometimes folks still just can't quite figure out where we're coming from, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Because I got nothing to hide or be ashamed of. I am who I is, and do not apologize for it. Since I was a teenager, I've been a firm believer in individual freedom and individual liberty. That's my political philosophy. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I ever told you guys the story. In part, it was listening to WVON radio back in 1990 that kind of put me in part on my conservative bent. And listening to the old, Lou Palmer radio show. So, how's this for irony and irony? Theoretically, the thing that made me the person that probably a significant number of you can't stand is the medium that we all love so dearly. I know it's like an episode of Forrest Gump. I agree. 773-591-1690 is number 556. So we're getting ready to wrap up the program today. And like I said, the issue with reparations for me, just so we're all clear here, has never been whether you should or shouldn't do it. To me, it's always been a logistical issue. It's always been about logistics. Because I firmly believe that the time to do it was when slaves were freed. That way you can identify individuals, children, parents, grandparents. And then if you want to be like some sort of federal trust fund or land grant, or educational opportunities at the time, I'm like, yeah, sure. All that makes absolute perfect sense. But fast forward to 2018, I'm sorry, folks, it's a little late. And once again, how do you figure out who gets what? Because it's a very easy answer to say, well, if somebody's a descendant of a slave, they should get it. Okay, well, what does that look like? And then when we start, digging in the weeds, and that's really what all this is just dig in the weeds and try to think this through a little bit. And let's see what's going on. Oh, by the way, Kendra, I did not get your email, so you might want to go ahead and resend that, because I have not seen it yet. So, like I said, that's my thing on the whole reparations matter. Like I said, just thinking out loud, and if you want to reach out to me in longer detail, feel free to email me through WVON, and they'll make sure that I get it. I'm happy to respond and engage in the furthermore detailed type dialogue, should that so be necessary. So, folks, that is going to, like I said, wrap up the show for today. Like I said, tomorrow we'll talk guns, tobacco. Donald Trump want to put Medicaid people to work. Also, you are free to ask me anything. Like I said, as long as it's not, Social Security number or mom's maiden name, you're fine. And by the way, don't forget also, stick around, for Art Chat Daddy Sims. I love listening to him. It is always, it's a really good show, and it is always a nice, pleasant break, from some of the heavy, political stuff during the day. So definitely, you want to check out Art, and also my colleague Mark Wallace a little bit later this evening. And so that is going to wrap up the show for today. So I'll be back tomorrow. Just one more day you guys got to put up with me. And just remember, we all have our crosses to bear. Just for today, I'm yours. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.